Hello and welcome back to my Elden Ring build series. This is the second build in the series and is the Sekiro build. This build takes all its inspiration from the game Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, which is another FromSoft game, and utilizes a new mechanic added to the Shadow of the Erdtree expansion called Spontaneous Guard. Spontaneous Guard is something you can use through a physic tier, which you can add to your physic flask, which allows you to perform basically a deflecting move. If you press guard within 6 frames of when an attack will hit you, you will perform a deflect, which will negate all physical damage, as well as 75% of non-physical damage, like magic damage or fire damage, and will reduce the stamina damage, or the amount of stamina damage you take, by 65%. So it effectively adds a deflection mechanic to the game, similar to what you find in games like Sekiro and Lies of P. In addition to giving you a new defensive option, it also grants you a boost to your guard counters. Guard counter is the move you perform by pressing the heavy attack right after guarding an attack. It will boost your guard counter by 20%, but it stacks. So for every deflect you perform, you gain another 20% boost to your guard counter. But it caps out at 80% damage boost. But that is a lot of damage boost for a guard counter. It also adds a couple extra damages to enemies' stance, making it a great option to stance break enemies. In addition to utilizing the deflecting heart tier in the game, which I think is maybe the most important aspect of this build, I'm also using a kind of different and technical way of playing Elden Ring, where I will equip my main weapon, which in this case is the Uchi Katana, because it looks the most like Kusabimaru. It's a kind of short katana. And I will have that weapon in my left hand, and then I will two-hand the weapon most of the time. That allows me to perform guards. It gives me full access to the moveset, and generally it does a little bit more damage because it gives you a 50% strength boost as well. And you can also use the two-handed Talisman, which will give you an even more damage boost. But if you're having your main weapon in your left hand, you can also have a couple of weapons in your right hand slots. And by quickly switching between one-handing and two-handing your weapon, you have immediate access to different Ashes of War. So here you see me using the Rivers of Blood katana, which I think looks a lot like the Mortal Blade from Sekiro. And it looks pretty cool with the two katanas on the left hip. It has a very kind of samurai shinobi look. And even though I'm using the Uchi Katana primarily, here I can switch quickly to the Rivers of Blood by switching away from two-handing and have quick access to that Ash of War. And you can mix this up with a lot of different weapons. So I also have the Dryleaf Arts with the Whirlwind Kick Ash of War equipped, which is kind of a high monk or Senpu flying kick move, which really gives you a Sekiro style moveset and also gives you quick access to loads of different Ashes of War. I think this is really good for heavy dex builds, which this obviously is, where you haven't invested any stats into faith or intelligence, but still want access to a variety of different skills and Ashes of War. And even though this build in particular is based around trying to be as much like Sekiro as possible, I think this is something you could utilize in builds that use only Dex or Strength, or even Arcane, that don't invest points in the other like Intelligence and Faith stats, while still having loads of really cool and fun skill options that you can swap around and mix and match with, without having to use spells or incantations at all. Now here you see me fighting Mesmer the Impaler, and I start the battle by using Chilling Mist on the Wakiasashi to get a quick frost proc, and I'm deflecting his attacks using the guard counter when it fits. Sometimes you can't use the guard counter. Got Bloodhound Step equipped on the Uchikatana because I've not created the game, so it's a good option to dodge some of his more difficult moves. And there I use the guard counter to get a stance break. And as you can see, you normally get a stance break around halfway through the health bar, which kind of mimics the death blows that you would get in Sekiro. So you normally get 2 stance breaks with critical hits, and that will normally be enough to finish the boss fight. So it really gives you this Sekiro Shadows Die Twice feeling of breaking your enemy's stances with the boosted guard counter and getting in the death blows. Now, it wouldn't be a build video without me showing my stats and explaining the different stats allocations. As always, my build is at level 150. I've got Vigor at 60, Mind at 19, Endurance at 25, which I think is a really good sweet spot, Strength at 12, just to meet the requirements for the Uchikatana, Dexterity at 75, Intelligence is at 10 because I'm using the Warrior class, and Faith is at 8, and Arcane is at 20, just to meet the requirements for the Rivers of Blood weapon. You could, if you don't find yourself using the Rivers of Blood a lot, you could easily reduce the amount of Arcane you have to get your Dexterity up to 80, which is the last soft cap for Dexterity, and maybe even getting a couple more points into Mind. Now, the main weapon is, of course, the Uchikatana, which is Keen infused. And I really recommend mixing and matching and experimenting with loads of different Ashes of War on this weapon. I really, really like Flaming Strike, which is kind of this flame vent move. I love to use Spinning Slash, which reminds me a lot of the Whirlwind Slash from Sekiro. And, of course, Unsheath. Really reminds me of Ashen Across, but I think it's sort of up to you in terms of what moves and Ashes of War you want to utilize, and I think experimenting with different Ashes of War in this type of build is a huge part of the fun of it. Obviously, Rivers of Blood is a great secondary option or a secondary weapon. It looks good on the left hip together with the Uchikatana. It looks a lot like the Mortal Blade, and the skill, Corpse Piler, looks a lot like the weapon art Mortal Draw. It even has this sort of trail or inky trail that the Mortal Draw skill has. Another very important weapon to have in this build, I think, is the Dryleaf Arts. It's super light, and it has a lot of good different Ashes of War you can utilize, like a Whirlwind Kick, but it also has good utility options like Bloodhound Step or Golden Vow, which is a great option. It gives you more damage and more damage negation. But its moveset as well is really good to have on your main hand, because it allows you to have the kicking moves of the heavy attacks, which stagger really well compared to the katana itself. Sekiro also jumps around and kicks his opponent's heads. So I think it's a good secondary option to have and use if you're fighting enemies with higher poise and you want to stagger them. Another fantastic secondary weapon is the Wakiasashi. It allows you to equip loads of different Ashes of War like Stormblade or Chilling Mist, and it fits really well sort of aesthetically. Another aspect that I've been showcasing a lot in this build are the fan daggers, which I think is a fantastic tool to have on your throwable weapon slot, because they're quick projectiles that come out really fast and they travel in like a shotgun blast, so they clip opponents really easily. They don't do a lot of damage, but they keep the stance damage of your opponent up at all times. So against bosses, they're good to have when they're jumping away from you to sort of keep their stance damage up. Obviously, the deflecting heart here is what you want in your physic flask, and then the second option is kind of up to you. I like the opaline heart here because it, reduces damage. But you can obviously use the stamina tier, which gives you more stamina regeneration, or even the tier that gives you more stamina in general. They're both really good options for this build. For the outfit, I am currently wearing the Ronin's armor, altered, which I think looks the most like Sekiro's outfit from the game. In this iteration, I'm wearing the Fire Prelate's gauntlets and greaves. They give really high poise and damage reduction, And I think they look pretty good with this outfit. I'm also using St. Trina's Blossom, which is my favorite headpiece from the DLC. It's very light, gives good poise for its weight, and gives a little bit of extra mind too. Now, if you wanted a more true-to-life look, there is another option you can use. Here you see me using the Land of Reeves Greaves and the Mesmer's Gauntlets. I've also switched out the Mortal Blade with the Rock Sasha's Katana because that weapon you wear on your back, which is more similar to what Sekiro does in the game. I also think the Dragon Hunter's Great Katana looks pretty good on the back, and I think is very much in line with what Sekiro would do if he were in the Lands Between when fighting dragons. He would definitely use a katana that was built for fighting dragons. I think you can definitely mix and match a bit, and the Ash of War looks good too. So I think have some fun with the build and mix and match what you feel like to get a look and an aesthetic that you enjoy. But this outfit will offer a little less damage reduction and a little less poise, but if you're good at deflecting, you don't really need the poise to begin with. And keep in mind, when using the Dragon Hunter's Great Katana, you have to two-hand the weapon to actually utilize the Ash of War, or else you won't have the stats to use it. Finally, for the talismans, I really like to use the two-headed turtle talisman. It boosts your stamina regeneration, which lets you perform more actions and more quickly recover from stuff like dodging and attacking, which I think makes the game feel a lot better. In this build, I highly recommend using the two-handed talisman. It boosts your damage by quite a lot. In addition, especially in the DLC, I highly recommend using the damage negation talismans, the Great Shield talismans, like the Dragon Crest Great Shield talisman, and etc. And just use the talismans that are fitting for the bosses that you are fighting. I also really like using the Blessed Dew talisman, at least when I'm out discovering or exploring the world, because it adds some regeneration to your FP, which makes you be able to use more skills when out and exploring without having to drink too many flasks. But when fighting bosses, I recommend also using the Crimson Seed talismans, because they will increase the amount of health you replenish when using your flasks, which makes your flasks worth more and makes you have to drink less to recover more HP, which is always good. And that's pretty much the build. Here you see me fighting the Black Blade Kindred. I'm using the Wakizashi with the Strobe Blade for the ranged option, and I'm generally just trying to deflect and avoid his attacks whenever I can. Sometimes you don't want to deflect every attack because you might be guard broken if you deflect too much in a row. So when playing Elden Ring, it's good to sort of mix and weave in deflections and dodges, and getting some clutch heals here and there, in order to fully utilize the moveset. Now I hope that this build, even if you don't copy it entirely, inspires you to sort of experiment with having your main weapon in the left hand, because it's a great way of really expanding the moveset of builds that don't use faith or intelligence, but give you access to so many cool skills. You can definitely use some of the more unique skills from other somber weapons, and you don't have to use this particular outfit or this particular weapon set for a build like this to work. And that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed the build. Thank you so much for watching. I'm getting some really clutch hits in here in the end, and I'm finishing it all off with a cowardly range attack. I'll see you soon for my last build video, which will be another slightly more unique build. I hope you enjoyed, and see you soon.